Get Warrior Tough, Mental Training 101 with Andrew Whitman and Dutch Coleman. And now back to Andrew and Dutch.
All right, we're back at it. Dutch and Andrew and Dutch. You can get Dutch on the Twitter at @DutchColeman. I'm at Warrior Tough PhD. You can use the hashtag #GetWarriorTough to get in on this conversation. I would love to hear from you. Also, you could hit us up on the email. The website's getwarriortough.com. A plethora of ways to get a hold of us. I don't want to waste any more time on that, Dutch, because I do want to get your thoughts on this. Now, here's the thing, Dutch, that you and I have these conversations, I value your thoughts probably more than anyone other than my wife's on the planet about any kind of these situations. I want to know what you think, because I know it's always well reasoned and you have reasons. It doesn't mean that I always agree with what you say, but I need to know what it is, because it makes me better, and it helps me reason through, because all of us have blind spots. I'll say it that way, right? And you help me find my blind spots and reveal them, and hopefully I do the same for you. So, but I would like you to just kind of walk us through this process with the effigy, the hate stuff. You've felt the hatred personally with and I know we're just being unplugged, but there's been times when you've been stopped by the police that you shouldn't have been. There's times where people lock their door when your kids go to a very nice private school and you've walked out and people lock their door when they look at you. There's people that follow you in the grocery store or the mall that are like the in-store security. And you felt all of those things. So I would like you to just kind of talk about it, however you want to. I know you, and I would ask everybody to just listen with an open set of ears and kind of clean the slate and just listen.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And, the thing is not really, a lot of times when you're in my situation, or you're a person with my background, I'll say your first instinct isn't to hate back, isn't to fight back. Your first instinct is to try to fix it, right? That's all. I don't care who you are. Your first instinct is to how can I fix it? Even if you see a person that's already way beyond and they're hating back and they're lashing out and they're doing all those things, I guarantee you way back when, their first act was, how can I fix this? What can I do? So what can I do in my sense was, I'm going to be a good citizen. I'm going to stay out of trouble. Be respectful. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to do all these things that society would ask me to do. And by the way, all the things that have been used as reasons to hate me, because people will say, well, we don't hate them for their race. They do this, or they're gang members, or they're that, or they are, the way they dress, so you get all these different things. What did you have on when they were, profiling you? What were you doing? So the first thing you do is you try to correct any and all those things. You try to make sure you're presentable, try to make sure you speak respectfully, you look respectfully, you're clean, you're employed, you're not in prison, you're not hanging around the wrong crowd. You do all these different things because you say, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be all the things that they want me to be. And when I say they, I mean whoever feels the hate, because it doesn't just have to be outside my race, because it can be people within my own race that have stereotyped me, right? So, and I want to go to an aside quickly. When people look at racism, they always look at, they always assume it's a white person, just for, like I just use white people, a white person that's doing the discriminating, right? Racism isn't always about the person that's racist. The reason that people are racist aren't because they're white. It's because I'm black. See, so that can be very confusing, because think about this. If I walk down the street and there's a white guy walking down the street, he sees me walking down the street, there's a chance he can walk to the other side of the street. He doesn't want, hey man, that black guy could be trouble, right? So he goes to the other side of the street. Well, the same thing can happen if there's a black person coming down the street and they see me and they fall into the whole stereotype of even their own people, right? And they cross the street for the same reason. So it's not about the race of the person that walks across the street. It's about my race and how my race has been portrayed. So people, so the victim, or the idea of racism is across the board when they're talking about white cops, discriminating against or profiling black folks. The same thing happens when black cops presented, because black cops receive the same information as white cops, right? And so they get brainwashed by what's put into the world, whether it's the media, whatever part of society you want to blame it on. I'm not into the blame part, but what ends up happening, however it's portrayed, it affects everyone. And so, when I'm doing something, the first thing I want to do is I want to correct all those images. I want to clean up everything as much as I possibly can. So then imagine that I've done everything. I'll use a horrible term. I've whitewashed myself completely, where you can't look at me and tell that I'm black other than my skin tone, right? I'm doing whatever you need me to do just to appease you. Then I walk into a situation and I still get treated as if I'm all these other bad things. That's where it hurts.
Right.
Because you're like, man, what else can I do? At that point, I'm helpless. I'm powerless. Like, what else can I do? That's the part that hurts, because, and I know how to live through it. I know how to deal with it. But I can't deny the pain because I'm a human being. I know how to recover. I know how to move on. I know how to not let it impact me, my day. I know how to do all those things, and I'm fine with it. But it still hurts when it happens, because I'm a human being, and what I crave is what? Acceptance, just like
everybody else. And can we just kind of hang out there for just a second, because this is such a huge thing. If every person that was listening to this, if you understand, you've all felt rejection or criticism or judgment, maybe not to the same extent that, Dutch has felt it for no reason, but we've all felt that, where somebody has prejudged us and said mean things to us, even if on the playground, and it literally does cause physical pain. We know from cognitive and behavioral neuroscience that the brain registers and records that rejection, that hatred, that mean set of stuff, registers it the same way as it registers physical pain, like somebody hits you with a golf club or a baseball bat or a hammer. So here's the whole thing with all the vitriolic, it's just crazy, the talk, how the rhetoric is ramped up, where this person's a traitor, that person's, declared war. It's all this, and we're just mean to each other. Mm-hmm. You don't like it when it happens to you. So why are we taking that pain and because it literally is violence. It may not be, you're not hitting them with the baseball bat, but those mean words literally impact them the same way. And a lot of times, Dutch, it hurts worse because I can recover from the bruise without a whole lot of baggage, but we know emotional learning, that stuff sticks with us for a very, very long time. I was a fat kid in high school. Someone called me fat. When I look in the mirror, I still see I'm fat. It doesn't matter how fit I am. I have to fight that every day because I was the fat kid.
And one of the reasons going back to what you said earlier, one of the reasons I can sleep well at night with all the abuse that Donald Trump takes, all the abuse that Barack Obama took, all the abuse that George Bush took. I feel good about myself because prior to President Obama being elected, there were a lot of people that weren't a fan of George Bush, right?
Right.
There are a lot of people, both sides of the aisle, that were not a fan of George Bush.
Right.
I remember defending him because a lot of the stuff that people would say would just be flat out nonsense. And it wouldn't be based in reality. It wouldn't be based in fact, but it was based in anger and based in other things that happened. They ended up falling on his lap, even when he had nothing to do with it. I was defending him. And people didn't see me as a defender of his policies and all of that. I'm a supporter of common sense, and I go against nonsense, right?
Go against nonsense, exactly.
So I ended up being a supporter of Bush from the vitriol and the hate that he was receiving, because a lot of it made zero sense. So then President Obama was elected, and he received a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I was defending him, it wasn't because he was a black president or because he was a Democrat or because he was whatever. It was because a lot of it was just flat out nonsense. And now, even with President Trump, we know that in a lot of people's eyes, again, like with George Bush, President Bush, there were a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that were angry. Right now, there are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that are angry at Donald Trump. And maybe some of it's justified, just like maybe some of it was justified with President Obama, some of it was justified with President Bush. But the anger and the hate and the vitriol, like all that stuff,
Yeah.
it's a lot of it is steeped in nonsense and is not necessary. And I'm defending him with that as well. So when it comes to Kathy Griffin holding up the head of President Trump, I don't like that. I don't like that at all either.
No.
And I didn't like it when President Obama was hanging in effigy, and I didn't like it when President Bush was being thrown about.
Yeah, when they put his head on, like Game of Thrones put his head on one of the spikes on one of their TV shows.
Right. So I feel good about myself, Andrew, because I know that I support common sense, right? And I do not like nonsense, no matter who or what the subject is.
Right. Now I'm with you. Now listen, you and I had this talk before when we were discussing this, and you said, listen, if you're okay with burning an effigy or hanging a whatever, then you have to be okay with it all the time, right? And if you're not, then that's okay. Now, here's where I'm at on that whole thing. Listen, you can do it. That's what a great thing about America is, that you could, criticize the president, even though I don't think you should, because you haven't been in the seat. So, you've heard me say that before. Unless you've been in there, you don't really have the right to criticize them, because you don't know
criticizing, what they and criticizing is not disagreeing with his ideology or his policies and all those things. That's not the same thing. No,
that's what I'm talking about, being judgmental and like going ahead and hanging them, burning them in effigy. Now, listen, that's your right as an American, free speech and all that, do it. I would not do it. Like if you were like, it doesn't matter whether I liked her or not, didn't like a person, I'm still not going to pretend that I'm hanging them, burning them, or cutting their head off. That is not who I am. Not even pretending that's not who I am. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm not a fan of it for anybody. I just wouldn't do it. Now, if you were okay with it and you would do it, but you're okay if you did it for like George Bush, or you did it for Obama, or you did it for Trump, right? Then you have to be okay across the board when everybody does it. If you're okay when they did it to Trump, then you have to be okay when they did it to Obama. You have to be okay when they did it to, but you got to be okay when they did it to King George.
Mm-hmm. And it's freedom of expression. It's freedom of expression.
Right.
If free speech is out, then it's free speech. Then you have to be okay with it.
Yes, and that's the thought process, right? So you got to be. That's how we think our thoughts. You can have whichever opinion that you want, but you can't have both of them. We're up on the break. You're listening to the Get Warrior Tough radio show with Dutch and Andrew. We'll be right back.